welcome to Makeup and Monarchies. My name's Tiffany. I am a hairstylist, makeup artist, and lover of all things UK medieval history. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Edward III's two oldest girls, Isabella and Joan, and how their lives went. So without any pause, we're gonna get right into it. Hello, my skin's a mess. FYI, we're gonna cover it all, and we're gonna go on. So Isabella was born on June 16th of 1332 in Woodstock Palace in Oxfordshire. She was the second born child to Philippa of Hainaut and Edward III. She was actually born a day after her older brother's birthday, Edward, who became known as the Black Prince. She was named after her paternal grandmother, Isabella of France. The wind is whipping. The wind is crazy today, so if you hear that in the background, my apologies. New England can't get itself together. As a baby, she was hampered by both her parents and slept in a oh my God, that's so bad. Dude, it's so bad. She slept in a gilded cradle that was lined with taffeta and covered with a fur blanket. Talk about a cradle made for a princess. Her gowns were made from imported silk from Italy and were embroidered with jewels and were also fur lined. She had a household of servants that included personal chaplain, musicians, a noble governor and governess, and 3 personal ladies in waiting. She also had a staff of grooms, esquires, clerks, butlers, cooks, and other attendants. This household was led by Isabelle de la Motte, who was chief mistress of the king's children. Not that kind of mistress, you dirty birds. I see you. December 19th of 1333 came another royal princess. Baby's name was Joan, and she was born at either Woodstock Palace or at the Tower of London. When the girls were young, they were brought to live in the household of William and Elizabeth St. Omer. Their older brother Edward was with them. When Isabella was 3, Daddy Edward tried to arrange a marriage between her and Pedro of Castile, who was the Castilian king's heir. This marriage never happened. The following year, Joan was betrothed to the oldest son of Otto, Duke of Austria, but with the stipulation that she would receive her education at the Austrian court. Daddy Edward was hesitant, and he had said he'd personally go with her, and the trip never happened. 1338 came, and Joan went with her father on a campaign. Remember, she's about 4 right now. They went to Antwerp and then Coblentz and met with the Holy Roman Emperor Louis IV. They were guests at the imperial dinner, and Daddy Edward was made Vicar General of the Holy Roman Emperor. An alliance was formed, and Louis deserted it in 1341. Also in 1338, Isabella was betrothed again. This second match for her was with Louis, the oldest son of the Count of Flanders. This fell apart as well. Joan traveled with her maternal aunt, and Louis' queen, Margaret of Hainaut. They went to Munich and stayed at that court for almost a year. She was finally brought to Austria in the autumn of 1339. It was around this time her betrothed Otto passed away, and Daddy Edward had a feeling the new Duke of Austria leaned towards a French alliance. Because of this, he decided to get rid of Joan's betrothal and wanted Joan home in 1340. So in 1340, Edward, Isabella, and Joan were still with William and Elizabeth for their education. It was at this time marriage negotiations began for Isabella again. The sisters often traveled together on important occasions. They were present at the Feast of St. John the Evangelist in the Royal Chapel at the Tower of London on December 27th of 1340. The girls then went to go visit their mother at King's Langley in February and March of the following year. I'm gonna jump off and do my liner. I'm just gonna follow through that like black line and smoke it out a bit with Carbon from MAC. Marriage negotiations began again, and this time it was for Isabella again, and she was meant to marry Henry, oldest surviving son of John III, Duke of Brabant. This was another failed betrothal for Isabella. 3 years later, though, she found herself in marriage negotiations with Louis of Flanders. Now, the Battle of Crécy had been fought, so this marriage betrothal was a little hairy. Louis wasn't in a rush to marry the daughter of the man who was responsible for his father's death. She was bringing a big dowry, and this was enticing to Louis. Now, Louis was a little bit of an asshole. All the contracts were signed. Daddy Edward and Philippa had a hunt in celebration of the upcoming wedding. Everything was going good, right? Nope. Louis was being a little sleazebag and rides off right into the court of Philip IV of France and marries Margaret of Brabant, the daughter of John III, whose brother, Isabella, had been betrothed to before she was betrothed to this sleazeball. Isabella wasn't known as a beauty. Her complexion was often referred to as sallow, and her hair and eyes were dark. At this time, fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes were in. Seems some things never change. Isabella was spoiled rotten though, and had her father's favor over her other sisters. Some of this favor was due to the fact that she was the oldest daughter and was still unmarried. But since she and Joan were born so close together, it's believed that Isabella was given more. She had 3 times the amount of ladies in waiting that Joan did. 1345, Joan was betrothed again. This time Pedro of Castile came back around. In the summer of 1348, she left England for Castile. She had a heavily armed retinue and was probably the most protected woman in Europe at the time. Supposedly, her dowry required an entire ship. One of her stops on the way was one of her family's castles in Bordeaux. If you know what happens in this whole thing, I would say that now is when you would start to hear the very dramatic building music. The Black Death had not made its way to England yet by the time that Joan had left for Castile. But once she got to Bordeaux, there had been an outbreak. Her entourage started getting sick and dying, including the leader of her dowry, Robert Bourchier, who died on August 20th. It's thought that Joan was moved to the small village of Lormont. She became sick with the plague and suffered from a violent quick attack. Joan died on or around September 2nd of 1348 at 14 years old. It's believed that she was buried in Bayonne Cathedral. There is a statue of her in Westminster Abbey, which is on the south side of her father's tomb. Also, at the same time of her death, her parents lost 2 other children, her younger brothers, because the Black Death had got to England at that point. So her 2 baby brothers, Thomas and William, who were a little over a year and a few months old respectively. So my mama heart breaks for Philippa at this time. I cannot even imagine losing 3 children at once, let alone 1. On November 15th of 1351, at 19 years old, Isabella was sent to leave, or was going to leave for Gascony, where she was supposed to marry Barry de Albert. However, right before she was supposed to get on the ship, she decided she didn't want to leave or marry Bernard. Daddy Edward didn't seem upset about this decision because he gave her custody of Birdsall Priory in Yorkshire a few years later. So Isabella fell in love with a wealthy French lord a few years later. His name was Enguillon the Seventh, Lord of Coucy. I'm not going to pronounce his name again. We're going to call him Ernie for this. Sorry. So he was 7 years younger than her. Go Isabella. Ernie had been brought to England in 1360 as a hostage exchange for John II of France to be released. Isabella and Ernie were married at Windsor Castle on July 27th of 1365. Isabella was 33 at the time and her groom was 26. Her father gave her a dowry of £4,000, which right now is over 3 million today, and also gave her a large lifetime annual income. Her husband was restored to his family's lands in Yorkshire, Lancaster, and Westmoreland, also Cumberland. He was also released as a hostage with no ransom. I am gonna jump off quickly and do my mascara. I'll be right back. I have like massive heavy metal 80s hair going on today. So in November of the same year, Isabella and her husband went to France. Isabella had their first child in April of 1366. While they were there, it was a daughter named Marie. The couple and the new baby went back to England shortly after Marie's birth. Ernie was made the Earl of Bedford on May 11th. The following year, another baby was born. The next baby's name, or was a girl. Let's start with that. It's a girl. And her name was Philippa. Ernie and Isabella were made Count and Countess of Soissons by Daddy Edward. Now, Ernie also served, oh, that's not supposed to be in there, the King of France as a military leader and was away a lot. So Isabella went back to England often. In 1376, she was made a Lady of the Garter. Now, being the daddy's girl that she was, Isabella went to England when her father got really sick and she was summoned home. She was by his side. I'm trying to talk in the camera and watch myself do this at the same time. It's not easy. Isabella was by her father's side on June 21st, 1377, when he died at Sheen Palace in Richmond, London. Her nephew Richard became king, succeeding his grandfather on the throne, becoming Richard II. Now, Ernie was not down with this. He renounced his allegiance to the English crown and resigned all of his English possessions. He then fought for the Valois cause during the 100 Years' War. Isabella petitioned Richard's first parliament in his reign. She claimed femme sole, which is a Norman French phrase meaning a woman without a husband, especially one who is divorced. Now, Isabella, being the badass she was not fucking playing. She claimed this because her husband deserted the country and their marriage. She requested a grant of revenue and to be given Kendall Manor back to her. Ernie had taken Marie with him when he went back to France. Isabella stayed in England. This is so difficult to do backwards because I'm watching myself do it. Isabella stayed in England with Philippa. And even though Ernie wrote to Philippa, he never saw her or Isabella again. All right, I'm gonna finish this. I'll be right back. The true date of Isabella's death is unknown, but there have been several thrown out there. March 15th or May 4th of 1379 or June 7th or October 5th of 1382. It is known that Ernie remarried in 1380, so I would lean towards the 79 dates as there was no official divorce between Isabella and Ernie. She was buried at Greyfriars Church in Newgate, London. I'm gonna go put my lips on. I will be okay. I'm back. I used Charlotte Tilbury lip liner, call it Lip Cheat in Pillowtalk, MAC Fleshpot, and then I used Vive lip oil in Rosa. Fleshpot is very light and I'm not doing concealer lips today, so hence why we did the Rosa. Anyways, I do have fun facts this week for Isabella. One for Isabella, one for Joan. Isabella, it is believed that she was her father's favorite and less close to her mother. It's always the way, isn't it? For Joan, Joan's death may have been a better fate for her. Her betrothed became known as Peter the Cruel. He was or became a violent, tyrannical king who was very hateful to the woman who became his queen. So, little Joan, I think you dodged a bullet there. So that's it for this week's episode. Next week will be, if not next week, the week after, will be Joan of Gaunt. I don't know if it's going to be 2 episodes or not. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping I can do it in one. But I'm just letting you know that Joan of Gaunt lives rent-free in my head, and Catherine Swinford. So anyways, that is it for this episode. If you wanted to know any of the products that I used, I'm going to have them listed down below like usual. If you're new here and have not done so yet, please hit the subscribe button and make sure that the bell has been rung so you get notifications when I post. Also, you can follow me on social media, i.e. TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I post there daily. So whatever is going on, or I put stuff in my story, and so you can head on over to there and give me a follow. It would be greatly appreciated. Lastly, if you enjoy these episodes and you feel so inclined to help support me and my caffeine addiction, you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/makeup and monarchies. The people at Starbucks know me here, and it's fine. It is what it is. So with all that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I did the girls together because there's not really a ton of information enough to have each of them have a standalone episode. So these are the 2 oldest girls of Edward as we continue on in our Edward series. So that is it for this one. I will see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed. That's it. Have a good one, guys. Thanks. Bye.